Okay, we're going to go quickly and set up our preferences in Nuke for the first time, and this is so that when we're using Nuke with the node graph and other people's scripts as well, it's just going to be a lot easier to see what's going on. So come up to Edit and go to Preferences, and the first thing we're going to go down to is we can leave most of these things at default. We're going to come down to Nodes and we're going to uncheck this option. Now what this is if I press OK and if I add a merge node, and let's say I have a couple of nodes here, and I've connected this, and this is our background, and I connect this one, and I want to connect something underneath it. If I press M with this node selected, it adds a new node below, and it automatically connects it to the B pipe now. Now by default it will connect it to the A pipe, which doesn't make any sense. Everyone I've worked with has said they just change that, and I think most studios actually set it off. It's because if you're adding something, you're adding it to your background. The B pipe is the thing that goes in the background. Think of B as it's always A over B by default. So it just makes more sense to uncheck this. The next thing we're going to do is come down to our node graph, and I'm going to quickly go back through some of these options and just explain a few things. But this is where we're going to do the bulk of our changes. So first thing we're going to do is click on this up arrow here. You can see the little up arrow, and we're going to change this to a pure red color, and I'll show you what these do in a moment. First we'll do that. The next thing we want to do is change our snap threshold from 7 pixels to, I like to make it 21. It just means it's 3 times the default, and I remember that pretty well. And the last thing we're going to do is change the size of our dots to 1.5, and you can adjust these if you want later. These are just the settings that I use. I find them really handy, and that's about all that I change. There are some other things you can change, but have a play around with them, see what you like. So the rest of these options down here, I don't recommend changing too many of the options, particularly things like node colors. These node colors are not easily exportable or transferable, and if you go to another studio, these are usually left at default, and you will see this merge node is always that purplish blue color, and if you change these node colors, it just becomes way too confusing. You just leave them at default, and that stands for most of these options as well. You don't need to change many of these. It should automatically pick up what system specs it thinks it should go by, so you shouldn't have to change too much of it to like maximize performance. It's probably going to be already very good. The only thing you might want to change is in your startup section. Come over to the startup workspace, and this is where you can change if you've created your own custom workspace, or you want to change which workspace gets loaded out of the defaults here. Then this is the area that you'll change it, and click OK. Now the changes that we've made mean a couple of things. The red arrow that we did, if we create a couple of merge nodes down here, and if I move this node so that this pipe comes up from the one below it, when I deselect it, you're going to see that it's red. Now that's incredibly handy, because I'm not sure what kind of how many Nuke scripts you guys have seen, but some of the compositors out there will just create a complete rat's nest. It's disgusting. They've got pipes going all over the place, and often they'll have stuff going like from here, and they'll go over to here, and then they'll have 10 different like things going on like this, and they just go all over the place, and it makes no sense at all. So being able to see that red pipe means that you'll see as you come down, you'll go, okay, this thing flows up to something else that should probably be down below it. because that's the way you work in Nuke. You work from top to bottom. You can work down like a waterfall, and if somebody's working back up, that may trip you up. So that's why we add the red node. The other thing is the snap distance that we changed. So this isn't immediately comparable to what we had before, but essentially as I drag this down, it will snap at a certain point, and that is now 21 pixels rather than 7, which I find a much more user-friendly distance, because I can be zoomed right out from here and I can just snap things around. And one thing you want to be doing in Nuke is leaving yourself plenty of space. Never pack your nodes like this. It just doesn't work very well. You're going to end up having to slot something in here, and then you're pulling things out and you're adding stuff. It's better to just grab all your nodes and make sure you always have plenty of space to add things in and move things around. So this is sort of layout that I would go with. And the final thing we did was we increased the dot size. Now if you hold control, you'll get these yellow anchor points in these pipes, and clicking on any anchor point will add a dot, and that allows you to do routing much easier. So this is the OCD's dream, because we can start piping these things around, and really maybe we have multiple read nodes across the top here, and we want to keep them sort of in line and keep them all piping in at nice angles. So we can do that by holding control. You can also add a dot by pressing the period button on your keyboard. And I find that increasing these to 1.5 just makes more sense, because they're easier to pick up. When they're at 1, they are literally a tiny little speck. And that's about it. There's a lot of other things that we could go into. Oh, actually, I did forget just one last thing, which is in our properties panel. We want to change this number 10 to 3. Now, you can adjust this if you want it to be 4 or 2 or 1. Sometimes I do change it to 1. If you change it to 3, it means that the maximum number of nodes properties showing in this panel is going to be 3 nodes. So if I close all these by clicking these buttons, and I come in and I press enter on this node, we get 1. If I press enter on this one and enter on this one, now we have 3. And it pushes them down. And then if I press enter on another one and I open up the node properties for this, it pushes out the bottom node, the last node that I was the last node that I read. So if this is 10 and we start opening up things, it really starts to scroll, and I've never been able to make heads or tails out of this, especially when you've got merge 4, merge 2, merge 3. No one ever names these unless there's a crucial reason to name them. So these don't really make sense, and then you start getting confused and you start pressing comparing between the two and trying to get them to figure it all out. It just makes more sense to go with 3, and you'll probably never find yourself needing more than 3 in this panel anyway. So that's it.